Welcome to the Marklin H0-Scale New Items of 2021 presentation. This is the first part, and we're going to do this by paging through the catalog, and I'll try to point out some of the interesting highlights for this year. The catalog starts with explaining us about the 50 years of the IC trains, which is one of the themes for Marklin for this year. And of course the Marklin Classic models. These are models that have been around for quite a while and are now in the continuous assortment of Marklin. The new addition to this is the Class 1 locomotive. Then the new releases continue with this beautiful Rhine file set. And it's modeled after about 1963. The catalog explains a little bit about the MHI initiative for the brick and mortar stores, and AJC Kits is proud to be one of the MHI dealers. Of course, this is right away one of the highlights, the Zeppelin. Marklin has always been known for Crocs and Zeppelins, in my opinion. And they're reissuing the Zeppelin in H0-Scale, complete with nice retro packaging, and this time with lights that also are directional, so they turn into tail lights if the locomotive reverses. Also, when it reverses, it turns off the propeller, and you can hear the sound of the electric motor that apparently was used to try to back this thing up. Very interesting because it became a perfect legal test bed for BMW's airplane motors. They weren't really allowed to test them on airplanes, but hey, on a rail car, it was great. So Mr. Franz Krukenberg, it was initially his idea, and in the 30s, this thing actually ran on the railroads for a while. Good item to have in your collection, and it's a great item for this year. Then the Rhine file, another very important item for this year, all done in a 1963 color scheme. And it comes with two sets of cars. This is the first set, the 43881. The important highlights here are that the beautiful dome car is back, but they have reworked the lighting for it. And so, as you can kind of see in this picture, it gives a much better, much more natural looking glow when the car is lit up at night. And then the open seating car includes taillights. These lights are fed by the current conducting couplers, and you will need the other car set, this one, with the humpback car and another car to be able to feed power to the first car set. The cool thing about this set is that it has a digital decoder and full sound effects. So you'll end up, if you have the complete train, to be able to turn off the lights, but you can see all kinds of funny sound effects as well. And of course, in this humpback car, you can turn on and off the table lighting. This portion of the humpback car was actually 2 stories, so that they had more space in this car. And I believe that all these cars were first class. It was a very exclusive way to travel along the river back then. So the locomotive that typically would pull these was the E10, and this is the E10 in the 1963-ish version, where they used the Bugelfalte, the little pan crease in the front of the nose. You can kind of see it here on this picture. And I believe late 1962, early 1963 is when this locomotive became available. And I think they did it to more streamline the locomotives. Again, this whole combination, so it's the 39126, and then the 43881 and 43882 car sets together make a perfect, beautiful set. Other things to note on the locomotive are that the pantographs are now, you're now able to raise and lower these digitally, and it has cap lighting for the first time. And thankfully, they also included a conductor or machinist engineer in the cabin. And of course, it has MFX Plus with a lot of the lights and sound functions, as you can see here. If you just have the mobile station, if you already have the newest update, which is 3.55, then you can access the vast majority of these functions as well. Then we're back to a rail bus, and this is a special version. They did this in, I believe, 1972. They took an old rail bus, it was the VT 95.9, and introduced a test bed for the Inducy magnet system. And in this case, they used it on a regular rail car. So what I'm trying to say is this rail car was still in regular operation. And so in this, you'll see passengers on board, and it would run in a regular schedule. The differences were, you can see there's no windows on a portion of the other side of the rail bus, I guess for the test instruments. And the print on the side would show that it was an Inducy, as they said, Messwagen. So pretty neat car. Later in the early 80s, they actually repainted these to yellow, and it would say in big letters on the side, Inducy Messwagen, Inducy test car. So a neat, again, MHI item for this year. Then H0-Scale is now linking with Marklin. As you know, H0-Scale is also part of the group that owns Marklin. And they bring out great models in all the different scales. As you can see here, search and rescue in H0-Scale. And this is pretty nice, a Unimog that they used on the track. This car will move, but it is not motorized, so you're going to end up having to push it around yourself. And then you can also see here O-gauge, if you were into it, with a beautiful 914, 916 Porsche, or the six-cylinder 914, excuse me. And in one gauge, we have the fire trucks, and then Unimog in 118 scale. The Insider model, we already announced it in November. It can be ordered by you if you are an Insider member. And then the car set behind it, it's a mismatch, it seems like, of cars. But this was just past World War II, and they did not always have all kinds of cars available. And so they would just grab what they had. To see this large luggage car, baggage car, behind it with 4 axles was actually the norm, because they would not have enough smaller baggage cars, and so they would indeed pull a large baggage car. So again, a totally prototypical combination, and a good eye catcher on your layout. Here it describes a little bit of the details. They made some changes to an older model, and you can see very beautiful detailing on the roof. And the pantographs can also be raised and lowered now digitally. And this here in the frame, these holes were done to lighten the train. Pretty interesting. Here you see the selection of cars with passengers. They added about 30 passengers to the car, so it's a great set. Here you see some more pictures, and then there's even a little tail light, as you can see right here, on the baggage car. These are all MHI articles. As I said, they are only sold by the selected MHI dealers, of which we are one, and they have a 5-year warranty to boot. They do such a great job of taking pictures of these models in these scenarios. All right, we'll continue with the selection of new items with this BR78 and the matching Mitteleinsteigswagen, the middle entry cars. They had the doors in the center of the cars. And there is a set of 3, as you can see. And what is interesting about this set is, as you can tell, this car is slightly different. It has a baggage department right here where you see slightly different doors. And then up front here is a control cab for the engineer. And if you take these three cars together with this locomotive, the BR78, you form a very prototypical train. And the cool thing about this is that this was the first steam locomotive that could be controlled from a cab control car. And so you would very often actually see this locomotive, or this train I should say, run backwards. And the engineer would sit in here and run the train from here. And I think that makes this a unique combination for your layout, where you could simply run the train as in original, backwards and forwards. You can also install a smoke generator into the locomotive, and of course it's MFX Plus with plenty of sound effects. But again, I think the neat thing about this is for one of the first locomotives that could be controlled from the cab control car, and this train could run what I consider backwards, making it very interesting. Here are the 4-axle rebuilt cars in the bottle green version. These cars have been issued before, and if you already have them in your collection, now you can order them. Same numbers as before, but they will have different road numbers. Then the BR01, always a very favorite locomotive of just about everybody. It now is part of the Marklin Classic series, and I'm glad they did that. It's a beautiful locomotive. Look at the wheels alone, it's amazing. Shoveling coal with the flickering of the firebox, it has it all. Very extensive sound effects. Then the BR56. Great picture of a BR56. And the Long Henry. Long Henry, a class 43, and was used here with an oil tender. They typically, as you can see in this picture, would pull these long coal trains and were used in a double header version. And I believe they went from Bremerhaven, which is up north in Germany on the North Sea, and run all the way to the Ruhrgebiet, more in central Germany, where a lot of the industry is, to bring them all the coal that they would need. And it gives you a little bit more information here about the locomotive. And of course here they use them with the Hertz 3D cars, the coal hopper cars. A great picture. And the car set that of course goes with this is this 46213. Now there's 12 cars in it, which for most people will be about what they can fit on their layout. But if you want a longer train, we also have 6 more cars available in the Trix assortment under number 24150. We will swap out the wheel sets for you. They are a perfect match, or add-on I should say, for this, for those guys and gals who can run 18 of these cars behind their locomotive, or locomotives if they are deciding to double head them. Pretty amazing. It was the 3D, there's also a 1D and a 2D, and that had to do with the load capacity of the cars. The 3Ds were the heavy duty ones that could, as you can tell, be loaded all the way to the top of the car. They are still actually running these trains, and but now of course with different locomotives, but we'll get to that here a little further in the catalog. Another important new release for 2021. It's what I call the German Crocodile, the 194, but it has completely new tooling. It's completely reworked. One of the neat details here is this darn little hose that they needed to get power to this additional light up here. Pretty pretty funny detail. Here they're explaining it, the new hose. Also, reworked roof with much better detailing than the older models. And it's hard to see, but down here, right above my hand, right in here is a inspection light. And that inspection light you can turn on and off with your digital controller. And it was there because this locomotive made such a racket, even while standing still, that it was very difficult for the engineer to see if he started moving or not, because the locomotive would not really change its noise level when it started moving slowly. So what he could do is turn on this light at night and obviously inspect the railroad ties and to see if the locomotive was actually moving. True story. So Marklin added this inspection light to the locomotive. And new tooling, German Croc, you already know this is an important model for this year. They added this beautiful matching car set. And I say matching, it's a big mismatch, but all period correct and good for a prototypical train. And the cool thing about this set, besides that it's all different and interesting cars, is this little beer car right here. It's a model of an actual existing car. Paulaner Brau in München had their own beer cars, and this is a copy of one of those beer cars. Interesting side note is that if you are an insider member, the car for this year that you get with your membership is an additional Paulaner Brau München car. That would be a perfect match for all this. It's slightly different than this car, and again, perfect add-on. Here you can also see that they decided to add one of the cement cars that you will see a little further in the assortment. But great locomotive and beautiful car set to go with it. This is an interesting one that you should take a good look at. The Era 4 livery, by the way. Here's a beautiful picture of that 194. And now we go to the little oddball. He's back. I call it the oddball. I always think this is a slightly differently, may I say, shaped diesel. The 280, Class 280 locomotive. And extensive sound functions. And the good thing now is it has the new style Telex couplers. And that will give you a lot of fun for maneuvering and switching maneuvers, and a lot of play value. All right, we get to a reissue of cars. This time again, these have been brought out before, but these will have new car numbers. And it also includes the dining car, always one of my favorites, with the pantograph to make sure that they get power to their kitchen and everything. High-side gondola, always a popular car because these are small, these cement cars. And you can run prototypical trains with a lot of them in it, if you will, or just run this separate like they did here below. Oh, and again, this is, you can tell by the item number, this has been brought out before. 4661, it just simply has a new car number now. All right, now we get to what you think is again the German Croc. It is, but this time it is the East German version. Look at this bridge, by the way, just amazing, what a construction. And so slight differences, especially the color scheme. They called this bottle green, and they used this in the 80s. And the trucks would always be red. That was their paint scheme. So this is East German. And again, the highly detailed roof. And they have some cars in the Trix assortment that will go with it. Again, if you order these cars with the Marklin locomotive, we will exchange the wheel sets for you. And in this case, there's 3 in the car set, and in this example, they decided to put 3 sets behind the train to make a nice looking train. This is the Toy Fair locomotive. We will get them, highly limited $24.99, so just below 2,500 pieces. It's the E103, and interestingly enough, the Deutsche Bundesbahn privatized to DBAG, and when that happened, they decided to paint everything white with the red stripe. The BR103 was just too late, or did not continue with the DBAG, so it retired. And Marklin thought, well, if they would not have retired the locomotive, this is what it would look like. So it's a fantasy paint scheme, pretty cool, and maybe something for you for your layout to run this special model, because again, it's going to be highly limited, but not an actual paint job. And they do this. This is pretty typical for the toy fair locomotives, because we visit the toy fair. We're allowed to order these, but they are always a one-off, a very special model that you will not see again. So for this year, it's the BR103 in the white with the red stripe, and this gives you a picture of. It's always a good looking locomotive. There's a ton load of cars available with it. And then luckily they're getting the I call them the double-decker cars. The Regio cars are coming back with the control cab car. And then the perfect locomotive for it, the 143. We still have the previous version of the 143 in stock as we speak. It's a very common locomotive in Germany. And this time, the outside hasn't really changed. The difference is in the inside now. Instead of the truck-mounted motor, like we're used to from Marklin, they reworked the inside and now have a centrally mounted motor, which with Cardan couplings will drive both trucks. So the news is more on the inside than on the outside. Always popular are the wood transport cars. And there's a set of 3. If you want to run a longer train with 6 cars, you can also buy the Trix version, and it will have different car numbers. And again, we can change the wheel sets for you. The Ludmila, they inherited this from East Germany. Absolute large locomotives, absolute workhorses. And interestingly enough, a little detail here, this white big surface on the front, that was required by the Dutch for safety measures, so that the locomotives would be more visible at railroad crossings. In Holland, there are still some unsecured crossings, and it's just one of the requirements. This way, you still mainly see this locomotive running in Germany, but this way they could run this train or these trains with this locomotive also into Dutch territory if they had to. This is common to see behind this locomotive, and they positioned this locomotive in the catalog between the lumber transport or the wood, because that you would see this train pull, and they position it between the military vehicles, because that's also a very typical train to pull. And you could have a one passenger car with it for the troops to stay in. These cars are very popular. The tanks are made by Schuko, lots of metal in it, heavy construction, just amazing. The difference between these two cars is that initially the cars used to be black, and then in later versions they painted them brown. But you would see on a train both color combinations, obviously, in a long period of time. Then there are also green cars, and as you can see, here's the logo from the Bundeswehr, the German army. And the green cars are owned by the German army. The other cars, the brown and the black, as you can see here on the bottom, they belong to the Deutsche Bundesbahn or to leasing companies. So here you have a prototypical but short combination with all the 5 cars available now. There's 4 of them available with Marklin, and then there is a 5th car available from the Trix assortment. And so most likely, if you decide to get this set, you would want to also get the Trix car. Again, AJC kits will change the wheel sets for you. Also, the more the merrier, in my opinion. If you can make a longer train and add a few extra vehicles, it look amazing, look very good. All right, here's another definite highlight. It's the tamping machine. It's a long beast. The Wiesmann already had similar models, but this is a completely reworked and redesigned thing together with Marklin. So that means metal body and lots of functions, and perfectly suited for Marklin. It's a completely digital model. You cannot even use it in analog operation. And essentially, it can run at high speed. So this is how they would do it. If it had to travel to a certain area, it would run on the overhead wires electrically and could reach speeds up to, I believe, about 100 kilometers an hour to travel to wherever they needed to go work on the track. But then the portions where they had to work on the track, most likely there was not a live overhead catenary, and so they had to switch to their diesel motor. So the pantograph would go down, and you could hear the diesel sound, the diesel start up, and it would work on under its own power, under its own diesel power. And essentially this model can move forward slowly and tamp and then pull this back up and then move over. And Marklin has promised me that they're making a video as we speak about this in action so that you can see it. Again, this is a complete new model and something that probably would create a lot of interest on your layout. Something to look at for sure. One of the highlights for this year. The BR-189, now with extensive reworking of the pantographs, Marklin is starting to put more detail into the top of the locomotive, into these details. This model, to be able to suit it to run throughout Europe, has all these different pantographs for the different power systems. You can see PL for Poland, NL for the Netherlands, and Belgium and Luxembourg. IT for Italy and I believe Croatia, Yugoslavia, the countries down there, and indeed Germany and several other countries. And excuse me, I don't exactly remember which countries, but they work with different voltages and different overhead systems. And so this locomotive, having the different pantographs, can handle just about all of it and move throughout Europe. Okay, I can already tell you that this is going to be a super popular car. Everybody wants these beer cars. They come at a very good price point, always colorful, they're just fun to have. New tank car. A lot of these cars, and as you can see here, the Tarp cars are always popular. This is brand new. This is actually also brand new in real life. I think late fall or maybe early winter 2020 is when these came on the railroads. A lot of these cars run throughout Europe, so it's not just Switzerland or Germany. You can find them anywhere. So on our website, you may find them under one country, but know that if you're modeling another country, most likely you will see these cars in other countries. The same with the NACO cars that transport metal. You can see them all throughout Europe. The container cars, the last few years that these have come out, they're very popular and they sell out. People want them. In this case, the Netloid, the Netherlands version, I like it a lot. That's why there's orange on it. And they also have an empty version in case you have containers that you want to load yourself on these cars. I have a few pictures on our website of the previous years, and even these cars are highly detailed by themselves. They look good even without containers. DSV, the Danish transport company, they use the trains a lot, realizing that that's a good way to transport goods throughout Europe. And Then there's another German hopper car. The A3/6, celebrating the 100th anniversary at Marklin. The brown version used at the Gotthard line. And it has the white and the red little marker light this time. The BE4/6, now in green. And they call it, fur green is what they call it. Highly detailed panographs. Look at this roof here. It's actually protective covers for the resistors. Wow. Here's another highlight for this year. Completely new tooling. I actually saw this locomotive back about 20 years ago. It was parked in Zurich, and I got to see it, and it's just totally cool. They like to nickname it Churchill, since Churchill rode on this train, but all new tooling. It looks a little bit like the Red Arrow, but there's not a single piece the same as the Red Arrow. So Marklin had to do all new tooling for it. The train still runs, believe it or not, and for special events and museum rides, I guess, and is the oldest train in Switzerland that is still in operation. But as I said, all new tooling, interior lights, and there's table lamps, as you can see here, that you can turn on and off. I can only say pay close attention to this model. They got the picture of Churchill right here, riding in the train. But to me, a must-have, very special model, first time available in Marklin. And of course, also in Tricks, which they decided to tell us here in German. Dieses Modell finden Sie in Tricks-Assortiment. Okay. This car, we all remember this one is coming back out. It's always good to have in modern freight trains in the Swiss cargo livery. And then the BLS in the new green color. And very often seen double heading trains. And you can use this with the cars that are about to come out, but we don't have them yet in the same green coloring. Always a favorite of mine, the 421, which used to be RE4/4. And now has the centrally located motor as well. Great looking locomotive. Crossrail. So that's a Class 77. Slightly different from the 66. You have a third entry door here, slightly different windows. It has dynamic smoke, and it's factory installed. So that's pretty cool, a diesel that actually smokes. Different model than what we're used to, but it's a British design that has made its way into Europe. And I think the reason is that Europe is already so highly electrified. They don't do much in diesels anymore, in big powerful diesels, but the Brits apparently still do. And here it is in the Crossrail version, the Swiss version, but Switzerland doesn't want these running, I think, in their own country because they pollute. They like to prefer to do everything electric. So you'll see this one, even though it's Swiss, running more in other European countries. And so there you have it. Here it is, right in front of a windmill. Pretty funny. Tells you a little bit more about the history of it. Always a good car. I've seen these run in Germany as well. So it's a Swiss panorama car, but wouldn't be surprised to see one in a mixed-matched train. The more Swiss Jura cement cars and the Rollende Landstraße, the rolling road car set, this time without cars, so that you can pick your favorite cars and add them to it. Okay, we're talking about highlights. Here's another one. You think it's a Swiss, but it's not. It's the Austrian Crocodile. Slightly different nose. This is very particular for the Austrian version. First time that Marklin is doing it in this type of detail in this livery. Very popular already. We're already getting a lot of orders for this locomotive, and as you can see, it's a very nice one. So again, one of the highlights for this year, and I would definitely take a close look at it and consider this for your collection. Here you see some of the details, new tooling, highly detailed. It's of course metal construction, MFX decoder with lots of features, cab and engine room lighting, and this is a nice little detail, the box at the end of the cab, and lots of nice details. Here we see some hopper cars. They were perfect for this Austrian locomotive. They came with limestone, and you look at this train right here, only 6 cars, and you go, it's not a whole lot. It's actually how they ran these trains in Austria. The inclines were so steep that the Croc could only pull about 6 of these cars, and so that's exactly what they would do from the limestone areas, the limestone mines, I guess, to wherever they needed to go. So this is how you would see that train. If you want to put together this prototypical train, then you need to go ahead and, of course, besides the locomotive and this car set, the 46231, also order the Trix 24121 set. That way you get 6 cars, and the Trix cars have different road numbers, so you'll end up with a train with all different road numbers. And again, we will exchange the wheel sets for you. Reissue of these Austrian passenger cars. So same numbers as before, but different road numbers printed on the cars. And another beer car. And this is a good stopping point for this video, because I know you're probably already falling asleep. And in my next video, I'll continue with the French TGV. Thanks for watching. I hope you found it interesting. If you're watching this now in early 2021, you can still order all these cars on our website, ajckits.com, and we will send them out to you when they become available. Again, thanks for watching, and hopefully you'll have the courage to watch video number 2 on the new items 2021.